morning was calm, and the small cafe was buzzing with the usual chatter of customers enjoying their drinks and snacks. Outside, the city streets were busy, but inside, there was a quiet, warm atmosphere. The sunlight filtered through the windows, creating soft patterns on the wooden floor. Among the regular visitors, a new person entered, someone who immediately caught the attention of both the staff and customers. He was well-dressed, carrying himself with confidence. A man whose presence seemed to fill the room before he even spoke. This was the millionaire, a man who was used to people noticing him wherever he went. His sharp suit, polished shoes, and the slight gleam in his eyes spoke of wealth, success, and a pride that came with both. He walked toward a table by the window, where a few customers had left a small puzzle lying on the corner. It was a wooden puzzle, not too big and simple in design, but enough to attract attention. The millionaire picked it up, examining it carefully. A small smile crossed his face. He had solved many puzzles in his life and had a reputation for being clever. Today, he thought, he would show everyone that his mind was sharper than anyone else's. The cafe, quiet for a moment, seemed to hold its breath as he placed the puzzle on the table and began to arrange the pieces. Behind the counter, a young waitress was moving quickly but gracefully. She carried drinks, cleared plates, and smiled at the regular customers as she worked. She was calm, observant, and quietly confident in her abilities. She noticed the new visitor and the puzzle he had found. She had seen many people come and go, some wealthy, some not, but she could tell from his posture and the way he looked at the puzzle that he was someone who enjoyed showing off. Still, she continued her work without letting her curiosity show too much. The millionaire began to speak, his voice just loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. He made a little joke about how no one would be able to solve the puzzle as quickly as he could. A few customers looked over, smiling politely, some whispering to each other about the man's confidence. The millionaire continued, telling a short story of his past successes with similar puzzles, subtly making it clear that he expected admiration from everyone around. He placed the last piece into position and leaned back slightly, clearly enjoying the attention. The waitress watched from a distance as he worked. She noticed how his eyes sparkled with pride, and how he seemed to expect applause even before finishing the puzzle. There was a small, almost imperceptible smirk on her face. She had learned over time that people who flaunted their skills often underestimated others. She did not speak, did not intervene, but she observed carefully. There was something about the puzzle itself that intrigued her, not because she wanted to compete, but because she liked solving problems and understanding patterns. It was a quiet curiosity, something personal, and she continued her work while keeping one eye on the millionaire. Other customers began to pay attention as well. Some were amused, some curious, and a few even looked skeptical, wondering if anyone would dare challenge the millionaire. He noticed the shifting attention and seemed to enjoy it even more. He raised his voice slightly, explaining the method he had used to solve similar puzzles, making it clear that he expected no one to match his speed or skill. The room felt charged, and the simple cafe had transformed into a stage for his performance. As he finished speaking, a few customers clapped lightly, more out of politeness than admiration. The millionaire accepted the small applause with a bow of his head and a satisfied smile. He looked around, searching for someone to challenge him. His eyes eventually settled on the waitress, who was placing a cup of coffee on a table. He saw the way she was glancing at him and assumed she might be a potential challenger. His smile widened slightly, a mixture of amusement and confidence, thinking that even if she tried, she would not come close to matching him. The waitress approached another table, carrying a tray, and set the drinks down with care. She moved with ease, her actions natural and calm. Though she had noticed the puzzle and the millionaire, she did not feel any need to rush or show off. She was quietly confident in her abilities but did not seek attention. She enjoyed her work and the small interactions she had with regular customers. Yet, she could not help but think about the puzzle. There was a small challenge in her mind, not to prove anything to the millionaire or anyone else, but because she simply liked solving it. The millionaire, noticing her interest, decided to invite her. His voice was firm but friendly, carrying the weight of expectation. "Would you like to try it? I bet you won't solve it as fast as I did." He said it with a tone that was half a challenge and half a joke, expecting laughter or polite refusal. The waitress paused, looked at him, then looked at the puzzle. She considered for a moment, then nodded slightly, not saying a word. Her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with his loud confidence. She approached the table, her movements measured and deliberate. The millionaire gestured for her to start, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Customers leaned in, curious to see what would happen next. The atmosphere was electric, charged with expectation and curiosity. The millionaire could not hide his smirk, thinking that this would be an easy victory for him. Another moment to enjoy his superiority. As the waitress reached the puzzle, she studied it quietly. She did not rush. Her eyes moved over the pieces, noticing shapes, patterns, and connections. The millionaire watched, expecting hesitation or confusion, but there was none. She did not speak, did not ask questions, just observed. The other customers watched silently, sensing that something unusual was happening. It was not just a puzzle. It had become a moment of quiet anticipation. Time seemed to slow as she worked. The millionaire's smirk began to falter slightly. He had underestimated her focus and her skill. The movements of her hands were precise and confident. She placed one piece, then another, each fitting perfectly. The customers exchanged glances, whispering softly. There was a tension in the air, a sense that the outcome might be very different from what everyone expected. The millionaire shifted slightly in his seat, a flicker of doubt crossing his face for the first time. He had been so sure of himself, so certain that no one could match him, and yet, this waitress moved with a quiet, unstoppable confidence. As she placed the final piece, a soft click marked the completion of the puzzle. The room was silent for a moment, everyone staring in disbelief. The millionaire opened his mouth, searching for words, but nothing came. He had expected a challenge that would last at least a minute, perhaps two, but she had finished in a fraction of that time. The customers began to murmur, some gasping softly, others laughing quietly at the unexpected outcome. The waitress looked up briefly, met the millionaire's stunned gaze, and then turned calmly to return to her duties. She did not smile, did not boast. She had solved the puzzle, yes, but there was no need to make a scene. Her satisfaction was quiet and complete. The millionaire remained at the table, frozen, trying to process what had just happened. His pride had been shaken, his expectation overturned by someone he had underestimated. He looked around, noticing the expressions of the other customers, their admiration for the waitress, their disbelief at his humbled state. It was a lesson in humility, delivered without words, without drama, simply through action and quiet confidence. The waitress returned to the counter, placing the tray down with ease. She resumed her work as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Yet, the impression she left on the millionaire, the customers, and even the staff was profound. Her intelligence, her calm, her humility had made an impact far greater than any words could have conveyed. The millionaire learned something important that day. True skill does not need to be shown off, and pride can be humbled by quiet competence. By the time the cafe returned to its usual rhythm, the story of the puzzle had already begun to spread among the customers. They whispered to each other, amazed at what they had witnessed. The millionaire, still seated, reflected on the experience, realizing that life had a way of surprising those who assumed they were always the best. The waitress, meanwhile, moved through the cafe with her usual grace, unaffected by the attention, quietly proud of her ability, but even more proud of her composure. The morning ended as it began, with sunlight filtering through the windows, warm and calm. But for those who had witnessed it, the day would be remembered for the lesson in humility, intelligence, and quiet strength. The millionaire had come to show off, but he had left with a newfound respect for the subtle brilliance of others. And the waitress, in her quiet, unassuming way, had left a mark that no one would forget. The puzzle had been solved, but the real story was about character, humility, and the unexpected moments that reveal true talent. After the puzzle was solved in mere seconds, the atmosphere in the cafe shifted. The customers who had been quietly sipping their coffee or chatting now leaned forward, whispering in astonishment. Some tried to hide their surprise, while others openly shook their heads, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. The millionaire sat at his table, staring at the puzzle with an expression he had never worn before. Confusion, disbelief, and a touch of embarrassment all mixed together. He had been confident, proud, and certain that no one could match him. Now, all that confidence seemed to crumble in front of the calm, collected waitress. The waitress, carrying a tray with fresh cups of tea, moved gracefully back toward the counter. She didn't look back or seek recognition. Her quiet demeanor only added to the mystery surrounding her skill. She placed the drinks carefully on the counter, wiping a spot of water from the wooden surface. Some of the customers glanced at her with newfound respect, impressed not only by her speed and intelligence but also by her humility. It was clear she had solved the puzzle effortlessly, yet she didn't make a scene. That combination of talent and modesty made a stronger impression than the millionaire's earlier display of arrogance. The millionaire tried to regain some composure. He cleared his throat, straightened his suit, and attempted a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. He looked around the cafe, hoping for a supportive nod or a comment from the customers that might salvage his pride. Instead, he found polite smiles, some amusement, and a few skeptical looks. His mind raced. He had been bested, and it stung more than he expected. He had underestimated someone because of her position and her quiet appearance, a mistake he realized too late. He could feel the weight of humility pressing on him for the first time in years. The waitress returned to her duties, attending to another table with her usual calm efficiency. She served a group of customers, refilling their coffee cups and asking about their day. She did not bring up the puzzle or the millionaire, even though everyone's eyes occasionally drifted toward her. She preferred to let her actions speak for themselves. Her composure made the millionaire's earlier performance seem loud and empty in comparison. It was a subtle lesson. True skill doesn't need attention or applause. The millionaire decided he needed to speak. He stood up, straightening his posture and adjusting his tie. "That was impressive," he said, directing his words at the waitress, who paused briefly but did not turn fully toward him. She acknowledged his comment with a small nod, her expression calm and neutral. He felt a mix of relief and frustration. He had expected shock, but not this quiet confidence. It was unlike anything he had encountered before. She was unshaken, unaffected by the attention or the praise, and that only made him more curious. He moved closer, trying to appear friendly and complimentary. "I've never seen anyone solve a puzzle that fast. Most people take much longer," he said. His voice carried a mixture of genuine admiration and lingering pride. The waitress smiled faintly, still maintaining her composure. She replied softly, "I like puzzles. They make you think. That's all." Her simple words, without any boast or dramatics, carried more weight than any of his elaborate stories. The millionaire realized that his charm and status had little to do with skill or intelligence. The encounter was becoming more than a mere game. It was a reflection of character. The other customers continued to watch, fascinated by the interaction. Some had their phones out, quietly snapping pictures or recording videos. The cafe staff exchanged glances, impressed by the subtle tension and the unfolding scene. No one had expected a quiet waitress to outshine a millionaire, and yet here it was. The story was no longer about the puzzle itself. It was about talent, humility, and the unexpected nature of brilliance. The millionaire, usually the center of attention, now found himself observing someone else with respect. As the morning moved on, the waitress continued her work seamlessly. She served pastries, refilled teapots, and smiled at familiar faces. The millionaire, meanwhile, remained near the puzzle, trying to understand what had just happened. He picked up the puzzle, turned it over in his hands, and studied it with renewed focus. He wanted to analyze her method, to figure out how she had solved it so quickly. The customers watched him, sensing that he was both intrigued and humbled. There was no mockery left in him. It had been replaced by curiosity and admiration. The waitress, noticing his focus, approached with a tray of drinks again. She set it down quietly and glanced at him, asking if he would like a refill. Her tone was friendly, not condescending, yet it carried an undercurrent of confidence that reminded him of the skill she had just demonstrated. He nodded, accepting the drink, and for a brief moment, they shared a silent understanding. Intelligence, focus, and calmness were sometimes more powerful than wealth, status, or showmanship. The cafe, once a simple place for morning coffee, had transformed into a stage for an unspoken lesson. People whispered about the millionaire and the waitress, about pride, humility, and unexpected talent. Some customers approached the waitress, asking how she managed to solve the puzzle so quickly. She shrugged gently, offering simple advice. Look carefully, think patiently, and the solution becomes clear. Her words were straightforward, practical, and entirely unpretentious. The contrast with the millionaire's boastful storytelling earlier in the day was stark and unforgettable. The millionaire, meanwhile, began to reflect on his own behavior. He realized he had relied too much on appearances and confidence, assuming that skill would automatically earn respect and admiration. He had learned, through a single quiet act of brilliance, that humility and competence could outweigh wealth and bravado. His ego had been challenged, but in a constructive way. He wanted to understand her better, not to challenge her again, but to learn from her approach to problems, her calm demeanor, and her unshakable confidence. Time passed, and the cafe slowly returned to its normal rhythm. Customers continued their conversations, occasionally glancing at the puzzle and recalling the morning's events. The millionaire stayed a little longer, observing the waitress as she moved gracefully between tables. He noticed the way she interacted with everyone, never rushing, never showing frustration, and always attentive. He understood that her talent was not only in solving puzzles quickly but in handling every situation with calm intelligence and poise. The lesson was subtle yet powerful. Finally, he approached her once more, this time with a smile that was genuine and humble. "I have to admit, I didn't expect that," he said. The waitress looked up, smiled faintly, and simply said, "It's just a puzzle. It's not about showing off." Her words struck him deeply. She had demonstrated more than speed or skill. She had demonstrated character. The millionaire realized that admiration was earned not through wealth or confidence alone, but through action, calmness, and the ability to stay humble even in the spotlight. By the time the millionaire left the cafe, he had a new perspective. He had come to impress, to show superiority, and perhaps to entertain himself. Instead, he left with a lesson in humility and respect. The waitress had reminded everyone present that brilliance could be quiet, that skill could be humble, and that true strength was often shown in simple, thoughtful actions rather than loud declarations. The cafe had witnessed more than just a puzzle being solved. It had witnessed a moment that would be remembered, retold, and reflected upon for its deeper meaning. As the doors closed behind the millionaire, the customers returned to their routines, sharing whispers and glances, still captivated by the encounter. The waitress continued her work, unaffected by the attention, her quiet confidence leaving a lasting impression on everyone who had seen her. She had solved a puzzle, yes, but she had also solved something much deeper, the challenge of proving that true talent and character speak louder than any display of wealth or pride. The day went on, but the story of the puzzle and the quiet, brilliant waitress remained. A subtle reminder that the most extraordinary moments often come from the most unexpected people. The cafe slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but the air still held a quiet excitement from the morning's events. Customers whispered in low tones, glancing toward the counter where the waitress moved with her usual calm efficiency. The millionaire sat at his table, his coffee untouched, replaying the puzzle moment over and over in his mind. He had been sure of himself, confident in his speed and skill, and yet in 30 seconds, the waitress had outshone him. Her quiet brilliance had made a bigger impact than any of his displays of wealth and intellect. He could feel a mix of embarrassment and admiration, a feeling he wasn't used to experiencing. The waitress carried on with her work, serving the customers and refilling cups with the same calm, steady hands. She smiled politely at everyone, exchanged a few words, and moved efficiently from one task to the next. Yet, every so often, she would glance toward the millionaire, who was still seated at the table. She didn't intend to, but she noticed him studying her, as if trying to understand how someone so ordinary in appearance could have performed such an extraordinary feat. She continued her work without breaking her composure, aware that the quiet confidence she carried spoke louder than any words could. Other customers, still curious, began to engage in soft conversations about the morning's events. Some were amazed at the speed with which the waitress had solved the puzzle, while others speculated about her intelligence and experience. Few had expected that a simple cafe worker could display such quick thinking and problem-solving skills. Their whispers spread slowly through the room, creating a sense of shared fascination. It was as if the puzzle had become a symbol, not just of cleverness, but of humility, patience, and the unexpected nature of true talent. The millionaire decided he could not let the moment pass without understanding more. He stood, walking slowly toward the counter where the waitress was attending to a customer. He tried to appear casual, but his movements betrayed a hint of nervousness. He wanted to speak to her again, not to challenge her, but to connect, to learn, to grasp how someone with such quiet confidence could think and act so quickly. As he approached, a few of the regular customers noticed him and exchanged glances, sensing that something unusual was about to unfold. "I have to ask," he began carefully, his voice low enough to avoid drawing too much attention. "How did you solve that puzzle so quickly? Most people would have taken at least a minute or more." The waitress looked up briefly, acknowledging him with a calm, measured gaze. "I just looked carefully at the pieces and thought about how they fit together," she said softly. "There is usually a pattern if you pay attention." Her words were simple, yet they carried the weight of experience and intelligence. The millionaire was struck by the clarity of her thinking. She made it sound so effortless, yet he knew the skill involved was extraordinary. He paused, considering his next words. "It's amazing. I've solved many puzzles, but I've never seen anyone do it that fast. You must have a remarkable mind." The waitress shrugged lightly, her expression neutral. "I enjoy challenges," she replied. "I like to see how things work, how pieces connect. That's all." There was no boastfulness in her voice, no desire to dominate or impress. It was simply an honest reflection of her approach to life and problems. The millionaire found himself reflecting on his own pride, realizing that he had often sought recognition through display rather than quiet competence. The moment was interrupted briefly by a customer asking for more coffee, and the waitress moved immediately to fulfill the request. She handled the situation seamlessly, showing her ability to multitask and maintain composure under pressure. The millionaire watched, admiring not only her skill with the puzzle, but also her ability to manage multiple responsibilities calmly. It became clear to him that her intelligence extended beyond puzzles. It was reflected in the way she carried herself and handled situations. As the morning progressed, the millionaire observed her closely, taking mental notes. He realized that her talent was not loud or demanding. It was subtle, deliberate, and precise. Each action she took, whether solving a puzzle or serving customers, was done with focus and care. There was a harmony between thought and action that he found remarkable. He had never encountered someone who combined sharp intellect with such humility and composure. It was a rare combination, one that left a lasting impression. Meanwhile, the other customers continued to watch, some openly discussing the situation, others quietly observing. The atmosphere in the cafe was no longer just casual. It carried a sense of anticipation and admiration. Everyone present seemed to understand that they had witnessed something special. The puzzle had been solved, but it was the manner in which it had been solved, the speed, the clarity, the humility that captivated them. The millionaire, usually the center of attention, now found himself learning from someone he had underestimated. The waitress moved to clear a table, and the millionaire took the opportunity to continue the conversation. "Do you often solve puzzles like that?" he asked. She smiled faintly, shaking her head. "Sometimes. I enjoy small challenges. They help me think clearly and stay focused. That's all." Her simplicity was striking. She didn't need to embellish her skill or seek validation. She let her actions speak for themselves, and in doing so, commanded more respect than words ever could. The millionaire nodded, feeling a sense of humility wash over him. He had come to the cafe to display his intelligence, to impress others, and perhaps to feel a sense of superiority. Instead, he had been reminded of the value of quiet strength, patience, and humility. The lesson was clear. Talent and skill are best demonstrated through action, not through boasting or showmanship. The waitress embodied this truth perfectly, and he could not help but admire her even more. Time passed, and the cafe began to fill with the usual lunchtime crowd. The waitress continued her work with calm efficiency, attending to new customers, taking orders, and serving food and drinks. She moved gracefully, maintaining her composure even as the cafe became busier. The millionaire observed her, realizing that her intelligence and skill were not limited to solving a puzzle. They extended to every aspect of her work. Her ability to remain focused and composed under pressure was a testament to her character. As the day went on, the millionaire found himself reflecting deeply. He realized that he had underestimated people based on appearance and status for too long. He had assumed that wealth and confidence equated to superiority, but the waitress had shown him otherwise. True brilliance could be quiet, unassuming, and humble. The lesson was humbling yet enlightening. He felt a newfound respect for those who carried themselves with dignity and skill without seeking recognition. The customers continued to talk among themselves, sharing their impressions of the morning's events. Some were inspired by the waitress's calm confidence, while others admired her intelligence and humility. The cafe had witnessed more than a puzzle being solved. It had witnessed a lesson in character, skill, and the unexpected ways talent can reveal itself. The millionaire, usually accustomed to admiration and attention, was learning to appreciate subtle brilliance without ego or display. By the end of the morning, the atmosphere in the cafe had shifted. What had started as a simple demonstration of skill had become a story of respect, humility, and unexpected talent. The waitress continued her work quietly, her actions leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. The millionaire, having witnessed her skill and composure, gained a new perspective on intelligence and success. He understood that true strength was not about showing off or seeking recognition. It was about quiet competence, focus, and humility. As the lunchtime crowd arrived, the waitress moved with the same grace and efficiency, never letting the attention from the morning affect her work. She had solved the puzzle, yes, but more importantly, she had demonstrated a character that commanded respect without a single boast. The millionaire, observing her, realized that he had learned one of the most important lessons of his life. Humility and quiet skill often leave a stronger impression than wealth, status, or pride. The day continued, but the memory of the puzzle and the waitress's extraordinary talent lingered in the minds of everyone present. The millionaire remained in the cafe a little longer, reflecting on what he had witnessed, appreciating the unexpected wisdom and intelligence that had been displayed before him. He had come to show off, but he left with insight and admiration, reminded that sometimes the most impressive people are those who remain humble and composed, allowing their actions to speak louder than words ever could. The afternoon brought a quiet energy to the cafe. The sun had shifted, casting warm light across the tables, and the buzz of conversation mixed with the occasional clinking of cups. Customers moved in and out, some stopping to glance at the puzzle on the table, now solved, while others returned to their regular routines. The millionaire still lingered, sitting at his table, a cup of untouched coffee before him. His mind replayed the morning's events, the speed and calmness of the waitress, and the lesson she had quietly delivered without even realizing it. The waitress moved among the tables, attending to new customers and chatting with regulars. Her movements were smooth, deliberate, and confident. There was no sign of pride or boastfulness in her actions. She seemed to glide through her work, and yet every movement carried a sense of intelligence and thoughtfulness. She smiled, answered questions, and refilled drinks, all while maintaining her calm demeanor. Customers could not help but notice her presence. It was the kind of quiet authority that comes from competence and understanding, not from seeking attention or approval. The millionaire watched her, feeling a strange mix of admiration and humility. He had come to the cafe thinking he would show off, to impress both the staff and the patrons. Instead, he had been humbled. The waitress had solved a puzzle in mere seconds, a feat he had never imagined, and she had done it with no fanfare. Her quiet skill had made a louder statement than any display of wealth or power ever could. He felt compelled to understand her, to know how someone could combine intelligence with such grace and humility. He stood and moved closer to the counter, where the waitress was attending to a customer. The room seemed to quiet slightly as he approached. The customers sensed a shift in the dynamic, curious to see how the interaction would unfold. The millionaire spoke carefully, his voice calm but tinged with awe. "I have to ask again," he said. "How do you make it look so easy? That puzzle, your work here, everything. It's remarkable." The waitress paused for a moment, glancing up at him with a faint, polite smile. "I just focus on what I am doing," she replied softly. "I pay attention and take things one step at a time. There is no rush. That's all." Her words were simple, but they carried a depth of meaning. They reflected patience, clarity, and the understanding that life's challenges are best approached with calm determination rather than arrogance or haste. The millionaire nodded, absorbing the wisdom in her quiet explanation. He watched her continue her work, clearing plates and refilling teacups, and realized that her approach extended beyond the puzzle. Everything she did was measured, precise, and thoughtful. Even the smallest tasks were executed with care, reflecting a discipline that went unnoticed by most but was obvious to anyone paying attention. The customers who observed her could see it too. There was an elegance in her simplicity, a power in her calmness that was both inspiring and humbling. The millionaire felt a change within himself. He had spent years building wealth, accumulating accolades, and seeking admiration, believing that these were the measures of success. Now, he realized that true strength and intelligence were demonstrated differently. The waitress had not sought recognition. She had not boasted. She had acted with competence, humility, and focus, and in doing so, had commanded more respect than he ever had. It was a revelation, subtle but profound, that made him reconsider what it meant to be truly accomplished. He attempted to speak again, trying to make sense of his thoughts. "I've always believed that success comes from being the best, showing it to others. But you've shown me something different. You don't need to display your skill, and yet everyone notices it anyway." The waitress looked at him, her expression calm and neutral. "Skill speaks for itself," she said quietly. "You don't have to announce it." Her words were straightforward but carried an undeniable weight. The millionaire nodded, feeling the truth in what she had said. The cafe continued its rhythm around them, but the dynamic had shifted. The millionaire, usually accustomed to admiration and attention, found himself observing and learning. The customers whispered among themselves, some inspired by the lesson, others amused by the change in the millionaire's demeanor. It was a scene that would be remembered, a moment where humility, intelligence, and quiet strength had triumphed over pride and display. The waitress continued her work with effortless grace, attending to a group of customers with gentle smiles and patient explanations. She refilled coffee cups, cleared trays, and organized the tables without any rush. Her calm presence seemed to influence the atmosphere in the cafe, making it more serene, more attentive. Even the millionaire could feel the difference. Her actions, simple as they were, communicated a mastery of focus and skill that went beyond the puzzle. It was the kind of competence that left an impression long after the act itself was over. At one point, a child at a nearby table dropped a spoon, and the waitress quickly bent down to pick it up, handing it back with a kind smile. The simple gesture, so unremarkable in itself, seemed to further emphasize her quiet strength and attentiveness. The millionaire watched, realizing that true intelligence is not just about solving puzzles or winning challenges. It is also about empathy, awareness, and grace in everyday actions. The way she carried herself left a lasting impression on everyone present. He reflected on his own actions, how he had sought to impress, to assert his superiority, and now understood that admiration earned through humility and skill was far more meaningful. The waitress had demonstrated a lesson in character, showing that one's actions and composure often speak louder than words or displays of wealth. He felt a deep respect for her, a recognition that true greatness often comes without noise, without arrogance, and without the need for recognition. As the afternoon moved on, the cafe began to fill with more customers. The waitress continued her work, her calm efficiency unaffected by the increasing bustle. She took orders, served food, and managed the space with quiet confidence. The millionaire observed, taking mental notes and reflecting on the lessons of the day. He understood that humility, patience, and focus were qualities that could not be bought or displayed. They had to be embodied. The waitress embodied them naturally, leaving a powerful impression on everyone around her. The other customers continued to watch and whisper, inspired by the display of quiet competence. Some approached the waitress to thank her for her assistance. Others simply watched in admiration. She responded politely and with a smile, never boasting, never seeking recognition. It was clear that she was content to let her actions speak for themselves, confident in her abilities without needing external validation. The millionaire, who had come expecting to demonstrate superiority, now found himself learning and reflecting. By the end of the afternoon, the cafe had returned to a calm, steady rhythm. The puzzle remained on the table, a symbol of the morning's events, but it was the lessons from the waitress that lingered. The millionaire, having witnessed her skill and composure, gained a new perspective on intelligence, humility, and respect. He realized that life's most meaningful lessons often come from unexpected sources, and that true strength is demonstrated through quiet action and thoughtful behavior. As the sun began to lower in the sky, casting golden light across the cafe, the waitress moved to clear the last few tables. She worked with the same calm, deliberate grace she had shown all day. The millionaire, still seated at his table, watched with a mixture of admiration and reflection. He had come to the cafe to show off, but he left with a deeper understanding of what it means to be truly skilled, confident, and respected. The quiet brilliance of the waitress had left a lasting impression, not only on him but on everyone who had witnessed her actions. The day ended, but the story of the puzzle and the calm, intelligent waitress would be remembered. The millionaire had learned a valuable lesson in humility and respect, and the customers had witnessed an extraordinary display of quiet strength. The waitress had solved more than just a puzzle. She had demonstrated a model of character, patience, and intelligence that inspired all who observed her. And as she continued her work with unwavering composure, it became clear that true brilliance often shines brightest when it is understated, unassuming, and quietly demonstrated through action rather than words. As the afternoon wore on, the cafe settled into a gentle rhythm. Customers came and went, conversations flowed softly, and the warm sunlight filtered through the windows. Yet, the memory of the morning's puzzle challenge lingered in the air. People whispered about the incredible speed with which the waitress had solved it and the calm, confident manner in which she carried herself. The millionaire remained seated at his table, reflecting on what he had witnessed, realizing that the day had taught him lessons he would not soon forget. The waitress continued her work quietly, moving between tables, refilling cups, clearing plates, and attending to customers with gentle efficiency. She smiled politely at everyone, her calm presence creating an atmosphere of warmth and order in the cafe. Her actions were deliberate and thoughtful, yet effortless. Each movement was precise yet natural. There was a rhythm to the way she worked, a subtle grace that seemed to flow from her understanding of her surroundings and her role in them. She did not boast. She did not seek recognition, yet everyone who observed her could sense her competence and intelligence. The millionaire, watching her closely, reflected on his own behavior earlier in the day. He had come to the cafe with a desire to impress, to show off his skills and intellect. He had expected admiration and perhaps a sense of superiority. But he had been humbled. The waitress had solved a puzzle that he himself had struggled with, and she had done so with quiet confidence, without fanfare or need for praise. Her actions spoke louder than any words or displays of wealth. He realized that intelligence and talent were not measured by appearances or by the ability to dominate a room, but by calm focus, understanding, and humility. He wanted to understand her better, to learn from the qualities she displayed. He stood and approached the counter once again, careful not to disturb the flow of the cafe or the work she was doing. His voice was calm but filled with genuine curiosity. "I have to say again," he began softly, "you've taught me more today than I expected. Your skill, your focus, your calmness, it's inspiring. How do you maintain it all?" The waitress glanced up at him, acknowledging his words with a polite nod. "I just do my work carefully," she said simply. "I focus on what I am doing and try to be patient. That's all." Her words were straightforward, yet they carried a profound message. They reflected a mindset of mindfulness, patience, and quiet strength. The millionaire felt a deep respect for her, understanding that her approach to life and challenges was not about seeking recognition, but about mastering oneself and one's actions. The customers around them watched the exchange, sensing the unusual dynamic. They whispered among themselves, impressed not only by the waitress's abilities but also by the millionaire's humility in recognizing her skill. It was a rare moment where the normal order of social power seemed irrelevant. Wealth, status, and appearance had taken a back seat to competence, calmness, and quiet intelligence. The atmosphere in the cafe was charged with admiration and a sense of lesson learned, both subtle and profound. As the afternoon progressed, the millionaire continued to observe the waitress. He saw how she managed multiple tasks with ease, balancing orders, customer interactions, and the general flow of the cafe. Her movements were efficient, yet graceful. Her eyes constantly scanned the environment, noting details without becoming distracted. He realized that her brilliance was not limited to puzzles. It extended to every action, every decision she made. It was a holistic skill, combining intelligence, focus, empathy, and calmness. He reflected on his own life and behavior. He had relied on wealth, status, and outward displays of confidence to gain respect and admiration. Yet, here he was, witnessing someone who commanded attention not through words or show, but through competence and character. He understood that the most valuable qualities, humility, patience, focus, and quiet confidence, could not be bought or flaunted. They had to be cultivated and demonstrated naturally, as the waitress did every day. Meanwhile, the waitress continued her work, unaffected by the attention she received. She answered questions politely, refilled drinks, cleared tables, and maintained the flow of the cafe without any hint of fatigue or frustration. Customers admired her efficiency and calmness, some commenting quietly to each other about her remarkable abilities. Her actions left a lasting impression, one that extended beyond the puzzle and into the everyday tasks she performed with ease and precision. The millionaire decided to take a moment to reflect in silence. He sat back, observing not just the waitress, but the interactions around her. He noticed the subtle ways in which her calm presence influenced the cafe. Customers seemed more relaxed, staff more coordinated, and the overall atmosphere more harmonious. It became clear that her intelligence and skill were not just about solving puzzles, but about creating balance and order through her actions and demeanor. Her influence extended beyond her individual accomplishments to the environment she helped maintain. As the day moved toward evening, the cafe gradually emptied. The afternoon crowd had come and gone, leaving a few regulars and the staff. The millionaire stood, preparing to leave, but he paused to acknowledge the waitress one final time. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "Today has been a lesson I won't forget. You've shown me the value of humility, focus, and quiet confidence." The waitress looked at him, her expression calm and composed. "I'm glad if it was helpful," she said simply. "I just do what I can, carefully and thoughtfully. That's all." Her words, modest as they were, resonated deeply with the millionaire. He understood that she did not need to impress, and that her strength lay in her consistency, her focus, and her humility. He left the cafe with a new perspective, reflecting on the day and the lessons he had learned. He realized that true brilliance is often understated, that quiet skill can be more impactful than loud displays, and that humility can enhance respect more than pride ever could. The experience left a lasting impression, one that he would carry with him in both his personal and professional life. He had come seeking to impress others, but he had left with insight and admiration for someone who demonstrated true talent and character without seeking validation. The waitress continued her work in the cafe, unaware of the profound impact she had made. She served the remaining customers, cleared the tables, and prepared the space for the next day with the same calm, efficient grace. Her actions, though ordinary in appearance, carried extraordinary meaning. She had solved a puzzle in 30 seconds, yes, but more importantly, she had demonstrated the power of focus, humility, and quiet intelligence. Everyone who had witnessed her actions, from the millionaire to the customers, had learned a valuable lesson about the nature of true skill and character. As the evening approached, the cafe lights cast a warm glow, and the last customers departed. The atmosphere was calm and serene, a reflection of the quiet strength and efficiency of the staff, particularly the waitress. The millionaire had left, but the lesson he had learned would remain. The story of the puzzle, the challenge, and the quiet brilliance of the waitress would be remembered by those present, retold as a story of humility, skill, and the unexpected ways talent can reveal itself. In the end, the cafe returned to its usual rhythm, but the events of the day had left an indelible mark. The waitress had solved more than a puzzle. She had solved the challenge of demonstrating true talent without arrogance, teaching those around her that real brilliance often comes quietly, naturally, and with humility. The millionaire and everyone who witnessed the events had gained a deeper understanding of the values of patience, focus, and understated excellence. It was a day that would be remembered, not for wealth or status, but for the quiet, powerful lesson imparted by a waitress who simply did her work with skill, grace, and integrity.